Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam suspends a controversial bill allowing extradition to mainland China following mass protests, the worst the country has seen in 30 years. Sudan's Prosecutor General refers former autocratic leader Omar al-Bashir to court. Sudan's ex-president is facing charges of corruption and possessing foreign currency. And 2 months after it was ravaged by fire, Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral holds its first Mass. Only 30 people were allowed to attend the service, all of them wearing hard hats. Hello and thank you for watching us on France 24. I'm Simon Harding. Hong Kong's chief executive has announced that a controversial extradition bill will be indefinitely suspended. This follows the autonomous island's worst protest since it gained independence from Britain in 1997. The hotly opposed legislature would have given the pro-Beijing government the authority to extradite people to mainland China. Despite the law's temporary suspension, protesters have promised to keep on marching until it is fully scrapped. Cole Stangler reports.
After a week of protests, a concession from the head of Hong Kong's government, she announced the indefinite suspension of a controversial bill that would allow extraditions to mainland China.
My relevant colleagues and I have made our best efforts, but I have to admit that our explanation and communication work has not been sufficient or effective. The Council will halt its work in relation to the bill until our work in communication, explanation, and listening to opinions is completed.
The move comes amid intense pressure from the street. More than 1 million demonstrators last weekend, according to organizers, followed by another mass march on Wednesday. That protest was marked by clashes with the police, who fired off rubber bullets as well as tear gas. Opponents of the bill aren't satisfied with the government's announcement. They're maintaining a call to protest on Sunday.
If this bill passes, it's definitely unfair to Hong Kong. We don't want postponement or more deliberation. It must be a withdrawal. We will definitely come out and stand our ground Sunday and tell them we won't retreat without withdrawal of the bill.
A pro-democracy lawmaker also expressed disappointment, criticizing Hong Kong chief executive Carrie Lam.
If she refuses to withdraw, to scrap this controversial bill altogether, it would mean we wouldn't retreat. Carrie Lam has lost all credibility amongst the Hong Kong people. She must step down.
Critics of the proposed law say it encroaches on Hong Kong's autonomy. China, for its part, says it supports the decision to suspend the bill.
Continuing in China, floods linked to torrential rains have killed dozens of people in the south and southwest of the country. There are still certain areas which remain without power or water. So far, more than 5 million people have been affected by the extreme weather conditions.
In the Chinese province of Hunan, video captures the moment a building collapses. For 2 weeks, torrential rain has poured down on the southern province. Homes, roads, and fields, hardly anything has been left untouched. Heavy flooding has hit these 8 provinces of the country hardest, affecting more than 5 million people. According to authorities, nearly 356,000 have had to leave their homes over the last 15 days. All in all, nearly 10,000 homes have been destroyed. Rescue authorities have managed to save some residents, but not everyone given the scope of the disaster. Like the human toll, the economic costs are considerable, 1.5 billion euros. The result of damages to more than 9 million acres of farmland.
In other world news headlines, Sudan's Transitional Military Council and civilian leaders continue to work towards a political agreement. The country's Prosecutor General has announced that former President Omar al-Bashir is due to appear in court on charges of corruption and possession of foreign currency. 41 other officials, part of Sudan's former government, are also due to appear in court.
During the next week, the former president will be presented before court with the charges of possession of foreign money and suspected illicit wealth.
Saudi Arabia has echoed their ally, the United States, and blamed Iran for the attack on oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said the kingdom would not hesitate to respond to any threats in the region, whilst at the same time urging a rapid and decisive response to the strikes. On Thursday, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo officially blamed Tehran for the attacks. The Rouhani government, however, have repeatedly denied those accusations. Al-Qaeda-linked extremist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for 2 car bomb attacks in the Somali capital Mogadishu that left at least 8 people dead near the capital's parliament. A separate road bomb on the Somali-Kenyan border has left at least 8 Kenyan police officers dead, with authorities also linking that attack to Al-Shabaab. Julia Kim has the details.
A double car bomb attack in the heart of Mogadishu. The first explosives-laden vehicle was detonated near a security checkpoint outside the presidential palace, a common target for suicide bombers. Witnesses described how bodies were strewn on the street in the aftermath of the huge blast.
I saw at least 5 dead bodies, including a worshipper who came out of the mosque at the time of the blast. All those bodies have been removed.
A second attack was foiled by police. That explosion took place at a key road leading to the airport. The Al-Qaeda-linked extremist group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for both bombings. Officials say the attacks were motivated by revenge. A day earlier, Somali militia executed 10 civilians suspected of having links to Al-Shabaab. This comes 1 month after the UN Secretary of State Antonio Guterres remarked that increased US airstrikes had crippled Al-Shabaab's training centers in central and southern Somalia. But he also added that the result was that the militants were moving increasingly into urban centers, like Mogadishu. For over a decade, the extremist group has been fighting to topple Somalia's fragile government and install Sharia law.
Here in Paris, Notre Dame held its first mass since a fire ravaged a cathedral in April. For security reasons, only 30 people were able to attend, all of them employees of the church. Members of the congregation wore hard hats, including the Archbishop of Paris, who led the service. Camille Nedelec has more.
Notre Dame is once again a place of worship, as 30 people gathered at a small chapel near the garden, one of the areas relatively untouched by the fire. Both the Archbishop of Paris and worshippers had to wear hard hats, as work to protect the building's structure hasn't yet finished. But the Archbishop was already looking to the future.
People working on the site tell me how enthusiastic they are. There's a spirit of communion in a beautiful work that transcends each person creating it. What a marvel. It's not about leaving a name, but about building something for all. It's hope that lives beyond just one generation or era. It's the future that's being built.
Notre Dame remains shut off to the public after a huge fire engulfed it and brought down its iconic spire 2 months ago. President Emmanuel Macron has promised an ambitious timeframe for renovations, pledging to make the cathedral even better than it was before. And many Parisians also want to get their Notre Dame back.
I used to go there very often, so it was a real tragedy for me to witness this fire. It is crucial for Paris and for me that things go back to normal as quick as possible, so that the spiritual and cultural life here can resume.
Donations have poured in around the world from individuals to huge multinationals alike, raising nearly $1 billion.
A new Picasso exhibition called Birth of a Genius opened in Beijing this Saturday, featuring more than 100 works by the world-renowned Spanish artist. The show brings together the best of the Picasso Museum here in Paris. It's the biggest selection of artwork by Picasso ever to be brought to China. France 24's Alexander Alcott takes a closer look.
The largest Picasso exhibition ever held in China opens its doors in the capital, where visitors can discover artworks from the first 3 decades of the artist's incredible career until the end of August. particular attention is put on Picasso's blue period from 1901 to 1904, which focused on the poor and marginalised, such as prostitutes and drunks. There's also a chance to see the blue self-portrait that's rarely lent out by the Picasso Museum of Paris.
It's a really fantastic exhibition. It makes me want to discover Picasso's other works.
Along with paintings and sculptures, the museum also lent drawings and photos of the Spanish artist. Insurers for the works, valued at more than 800 million euros, insisted they travel on 7 separate planes to Beijing. Although Picasso had no real links with China, experts say there are clear ties between his style and that of traditional Chinese art.
I think Picasso was first and foremost a Mediterranean, anchored in that reality. That said, in the genius of Chinese painting, in the mastery of the reserve, that is to say the white spaces, which you also find in Picasso. So here you have a link between the Asian world and the Picassoan world.
But even if there are similarities with Chinese art, many still find Picasso challenging.
I did a lot of homework about Picasso and then came here to see the layout and the works of the exhibition. I know that these paintings are really difficult to understand, and I do not fully understand them now.
Those in a similar position should take comfort in the words of Picasso, who said art is like Chinese. It can be learned.
We move on to a different kind of art, cinema, and iconic Italian film director Franco Zeffirelli has died at age 96. The Florence-born film and theatre director was known for his adaptations of Shakespeare, in particular his 1968 Romeo and Juliet, which went on to become a classic. During a career spanning over 50 years, Zeffirelli was also credited with the creation of more than 120 pieces of opera in London, Milan and New York.
A towering giant of post-war Italian cinema, Franco Zeffirelli was also known for his extravagant opera productions. Getting his start in the 1950s, after catching the eye of Luchino Visconti, the film director who later became his lover. Zeffirelli staged operas from Puccini and Verdi, with legends like Placido Domingo and Maria Callas. That was before his biggest hit on the silver screen, an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, which won 2 Oscars in 1969. Over the course of his career, Zeffirelli retained a special fondness for Shakespeare, directing Hamlet and Othello, along with dozens of other films, plays and operas. But he was also a divisive figure, a fervent Catholic who was elected to the Senate in the 90s. A supporter of Silvio Berlusconi, Zeffirelli said he supported the death penalty for women who've had abortions. In an interview toward the end of his life, the director reflected on times past, speaking in the third person.
I often argue with him. We fight. I love him, and I wish he never made mistakes. But sometimes he's wrong.
Paying homage to Zeffirelli on Saturday, the mayor of Florence called him one of the greatest men in the world of culture.
Well, that's all the news that we have for now, but if you do wish to check up on all the latest world headlines, then please head to our website, france24.com, which is available in English, French, Spanish and Arabic. The leading stories there on Notre Dame and the rebuilding process. And of course, you can check up on all the latest from the FIFA Women's World Cup. Thank you very much for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24. Bye-bye.